Here are 5 great reasons to shop Gardner White now. Gardner White offers the best selection of the hottest looks at the absolute lowest prices anywhere. We guarantee the lowest sale prices, period. Free next day delivery means you don't pay to get your furniture the next day. Buy now and you pay nothing till 2004. No interest, no payments till 2004. And we pay your sales tax. Forget the sales tax. 5 reasons, 1 conclusion. No one beats Gardner White. Hurry in by Wednesday.
Watch Jerry Hodak and the Doppler 7 weather team on Action News. Live from Broadcast House in Southfield, Michigan, the Michigan primary Democratic gubernatorial debate. And now, your moderator, WXYZ TV's editorial director, Chuck Stokes.
Good evening. Welcome to this live debate with the 3 Democratic candidates seeking to become the next chief executive of this state. The choices: former Michigan Governor James Blanchard of Beverly Hills, Michigan, not California, U.S. Congressman David Bonior of Mount Clemens, and Michigan Attorney General Jennifer Granholm of Northville. Candidates, thank you for coming. We're joined tonight in this statewide broadcast by WZZM TV in Grand Rapids, WOTV in Battle Creek, WJR 760 AM, and WDET 101.9 FM radio stations in Detroit. Outstate, we're joined by the Michigan Talk Radio Network. Let's talk about the format. The format for this debate: each candidate will have 90 seconds to answer the questions. Then the other 2 candidates will have 1 minute each to respond. The candidates will receive a yellow light when there's 10 seconds left. The questions will come from 2 of my most trusted colleagues, Channel 7 anchors Diana Lewis and Guy Gordon. I will also pose some of the questions. My questions will be from Channel 7 viewers, many of them undecided, and some of them joining us here in studio this evening. All right, let's begin. Earlier today, the candidates drew for the order of the questions. Diana Lewis, your first question to Ms. Granholm.
Thank you, Chuck, and good evening to each of you. Ms. Granholm, the phrase "under God" has been in the news a lot lately. Do you believe it should remain in the Pledge of Allegiance? And the second part of that question is about you personally. Do you live your life under God? And please tell us specifically, what role does God or religion have in your everyday life, and what influence would that have on your decisions as governor?
Thank you, Ms. Lewis, and thank you very much for this format this evening. Under God should remain in the Pledge of Allegiance. I think it is a very important part of who we are as a nation. It certainly is an important part of who I am as a person. I am a Catholic. I go to church every week. More importantly, though, it is part of my everyday existence that we live out the passages of the Bible, which is our greatest book, especially the ones that talk about how we are here to serve, how we are here to make this world a better place for the least of these. In our last debate, we had a similar question, and the question was asked, what is it that we would do with our faith? And for me, it's epitomized in the 25th chapter of Matthew, in the 37th verse, when the Lord says, "Whatsoever you do unto the least of these, so also you do unto me." That doesn't mean that I would conduct governance in a way that would bring Catholic faith into the governor's office. All I say is that faith is an important part of who I am, and it's important that we govern ourselves to care for the social safety net. Government ought to be lean, yes, but not mean.
Thank you, Ms. Granholm. Mr. Blanchard?
Yes, I believe under God should remain in the pledge. I would also say that my spirituality has taught me to respect and see the good in all religions. In fact, as the governor of Michigan, that's something you need to do every day. You need to look for the good in everyone. We also need to work for economic and social justice. And one of the reasons I'm running for governor is I want to get Michigan working again. I want to make sure we get our economy back on track. I want to make sure we improve our schools for everyone. And I want to make sure we also maintain that separation of church and state so that no one who attends school or works in this state feels a stigma that they perhaps are part of a religious minority. This is going to be very important for our future. It's a very important signal to the world that we are a beacon of freedom, opportunity, and tolerance. It's what makes Michigan special as well, because we are a special state in the world.
Mr. Bonior, your response to Diana's question?
The answer to your question, Diana, is yes, it should remain in the Pledge of Allegiance. When I was a young boy, I was an altar boy, Catholic like Jennifer. And as a young boy, I served Mass. I was there at baptisms, at funerals, at very important times in people's lives. And I learned from that experience the full depth and the breadth and the emotion of what life can take, what turns it can take, and how difficult it can be. I went on from there to become a seminarian. I studied at Sacred Heart Seminary for 1 year. Only 1 year. My wife is very happy. I only lasted 1 year, by the way. But it is a very essential part of my life as well. It gives me spirit and hope when things are going well, and it gives me sustenance when things are difficult. There's a passage in Galatians that goes something like this: "Let us not lose heart in doing good, for in due time we shall reap if we do not grow weary." I don't believe in growing weary. I believe in standing with the people who need a voice.
Thank you, Mr. Bonior. Guy Gordon, your question to Mr. Blanchard.
All right. Thank you, Chuck, and we're delighted that all three of you could join us here this evening. Mr. Blanchard, I think we'll get a little argument if I say that if you're elected governor, you will inherit a financially troubled state. We know that there has been a $700 million budget deficit to address in the next fiscal year. To some degree, it's already been addressed with the cigarette tax hike. The rollback in the single business tax has been delayed. We've seen a 7-10% across-the-board cut in state government. Would you keep those spending priorities? And if there are further deficits in the future, what two budget items would you first cut, and what taxes would you raise?
Well, it's a big question, and you're right. Under 12 years of John Engler and the Republican legislature, the state's in a mess. There is a $1 billion deficit, and there's more than that. Unemployment is rising. Not only that, but the state is laying off 8,000 of its most talented people, the top civil servants. What I would do is immediately order an independent audit, financial audit, of the state's finances to look at the condition of our state. And I've dealt with this before. I've turned around a sagging economy. I did that as governor in 1982, a far worse situation. We're going to have, nothing is going to be sacred. We'll have to look at across-the-board cuts. We'll have to look at remaking and reshaping state government, because the brain drain, Guy, is probably worse than the spending drain or the revenue drain. So I will remake state government from top to bottom and do as I did before, which is give us the kind of credit rating and the strength we need to get Michigan working again. And that's what we have to do. It isn't just managing Lansing, which is nice. It is making sure that Lansing is a helpful partner to cities and towns and to people and to working people. It's to try to make sure we get our economy back on track so we have the talent pool for the future. And that requires us to be a helpful partner, and it requires us first to turn around the sagging state budget. How do I know I can do it? I've done it before. And this challenge is relatively minor compared to what I dealt with in 1982 and 83 when we left a $422 million surplus and a AA credit rating, I'm proud to say.
Mr. Bonior?
Well, when you're taking on water, you shouldn't have to drill more holes in your boat. And the state is taking on water. It's in difficult financial fiscal straits right now. I would pause in the single business tax reduction and pause in the income tax reduction. I'm the only Democratic candidate who will tell you that. We're going to have resources and money for health care and education and environmental concerns. We have got to have the money to spend on those programs that are necessary for our constituents. What would I cut, to answer your question? Well, the Family and Independent Agency has a computer system. Its cost has gone up to $140 million. This is to track down deadbeat parents who haven't paid their child support. I would make sure we wouldn't have wasteful spending like that. I would also buy prescription drugs in bulk for the whole state so we could get it at 40, 50, 60, 70% reduction. That will help individuals, that will help health plans, and that will help our state budget as well.
Ms. Granholm, your turn.
It's very important for the state, when it loses its revenue, to tighten its belt, just like you would if you were at home and you lost revenue. It's very important for the state to think through ways that it can manage itself by leveraging technology, by consolidating departments, by making sure we make wise management decisions. Last November, when there was an executive order to cut the state department budgets, I run a principal department of state government. I run the largest law firm in the state of Michigan as the Attorney General. We cut by 5%. There's fat in any organization, and there's fat in state government as well. I don't think we should ask the people to increase their revenue until the state first looks at what it can cut. I have an economic plan that will grow revenue to the state by making sure we grow jobs that are technology-based, making sure that we grow small businesses, and making sure that we renovate our cities as a means of spurring revenue to the state of Michigan.
Thank you, Ms. Granholm. Diana, your question to Mr. Bonior.
Mr. Bonior, a slew of corporate accounting scandals has shaken the economy, and drained retirement accounts. What would you do as governor to hold executives in Michigan accountable and punish them when investors and employees are misled?
Well, we have seen recently with Enron, with Global Crossing, with Kmart, with WorldCom, we have seen working families lose their basic sustenance. They've had their jobs eliminated. They've had their pensions taken away from them. They've had their health care stolen from them. Their lives have been destroyed. And while this is going on, the people at the top have not taken responsibility. It's fallen on everybody else. Now, we got to change that. And as the governor of the state, I'm going to look at how our corporations operate in the state. And if they aren't operating in the best interest of our workers, we're not going to invest our dollars in those corporations. We're not going to provide them with the tax benefits that they seek. We can have good corporate citizens, and we can work together to make our state work better, because there are many corporations in this state that are doing that and are working well. But there is no place for this greed. There's no place for companies that lay off 50,000 people and then in the same breath give their CEO a $1.5 million bonus. They did that at Nortel. And I would say, with all due respect, my colleague here, Mr. Blanchard, serves on the board of Nortel when that happened, and he may want to respond to that. That won't be tolerated under a Bonior-Smith administration.
Ms. Granholm, your response. Clearly, people who have 401ks are pretty scared right now.
I think everybody who has a 401k or any sort of pension is very concerned. We've seen the stock market plummet. First of all, we need to abide by the investment principles that have recently been articulated through the National Association of Attorneys General, which require that there be transparency with respect to stock markets, with respect to the brokers and what funds they are recommending investment in, so that there's not a conflict of interest among those who sell you the stock and the funds they are recommending that you invest in. Second, it is hugely important that we prosecute. Some people steal at the point of a gun, and some people steal at the point of a pen. They're both equally guilty. I have, as Attorney General, taken on cases where poor average citizens, poor investors, I don't mean poor financially, but average citizens have been bilked by financial advisors, and I've put those financial advisors in jail. We need to enforce the law and be tough about it, whether it is a white-collar person or a criminal on the street.
Thank you, Ms. Granholm. Mr. Blanchard?
Well, I have not seen a credibility crisis like this in my adult lifetime with the business community. And I think it's true. People are rearranging their lives. Their whole retirement plans have been rearranged and really decimated. Let me mention on Nortel, I'm proud to say that Nortel has its pension funds fully funded. I'm also proud to say to the people of Michigan that during my time as your governor, we fully funded the state of Michigan pension plan. And when we inherited the plan, it was not fully funded. In fact, it was being rated to operate. I'm proud to say we not only funded it to a tune of 100%, but we added dental and vision for our employees. We also tripled the value of the pension plan, even though the stock market only doubled. It's a record I'm proud of, and we have to first, as governor, remember the state employees and the school employees. Remember our own employees first before we lecture others. I might also say one thing I think we can do that I think would be wise would be, instead of trying to punish people after they've ruined people's lives and laid people off and destroyed their pensions, what we need to do in Michigan, I believe, is to require all Michigan employers to quarterly report the status of their pension plans, its condition, its assumptions, so that we can, on the record, have a review of it.
Okay. Hate to cut you off, but we are trying to adhere to the time.
I don't see the light over here, so excuse me.
As I mentioned at the top of this show, we asked a lot of viewers to be able to send in their questions so that the questions wouldn't just be coming from us as journalists, but also from real people out there with real problems. Here's one of them, and the question goes to Ms. Granholm. Something we have all experienced is the condition of Michigan's roads. Mary Shelby of Grosse Pointe Park wrote in and asked, if you don't get back money from the government, extra money to be able to repair Michigan's roads, whether it's Washington or it's Lansing, what is your plan B? Will you raise taxes? I just want the truth.
I very much appreciate the question. I would like to see raised the diesel tax in the state of Michigan so that the truck drivers pay the same as the rest of the motoring public. That will generate some additional revenue. But you're right in the question that I don't think it will be enough. We're going to have to do a few things. One is, I don't want to see a gas tax. I'll be honest with you. I just don't. I think there are a number of things we should pursue first. First of all, in addition to the diesel tax, we need to make sure that we prioritize the paving and repaving of roads where infrastructure exists and not to subsidize sprawl further out into the green space. We need to make sure that we fix it first, and that is a key priority of mine, so that we are not spending road money elsewhere. Second, I know that your question said if you don't get additional money, but I'm going to have to beg the assumption. We are a donor state in Michigan. We get 90.5 cents on every dollar that we give in Washington. Now, we're the automotive capital of the world. If we're a donor state, somebody's a donee state, and if anybody should be a donee state, it should be Michigan as the automotive capital of the world. So we need to work very closely with our legislative leaders to make sure that we bring home the bacon, that we bring home the money on the federal level. So, and finally, warranties are very important. It is important that we insist upon warranties. Those who build our roads ought to be responsible for repairing them.
Thank you, Ms. Granholm. Mr. Bonior, Ms. Granholm said that she would raise the diesel tax, but would not want to go up in the gas tax. What taxes would you raise if you can't get the money from the government?
Well, I think we need to raise the diesel tax as well. I would agree with her on that. The roads are a disaster here. It takes me 20 minutes to settle down on bumpity-bumpity-bump at the end of a campaign day. And we need to do the following things, I think. Fix the existing roads that we have, rather than building a whole new strata of roads throughout our state. We need to make sure that we have warranties as well for our roads. So if you're going to build the roads in this state or design the roads, you got to guarantee them, or you're not going to get a contract from David Bonior and Alma Wheeler-Smith. And where I would differ with both of my opponents here is that I would reduce the truck weights. They're too heavy. They're twice as heavy as any other state. We've got to get that truck weight down in Michigan. They do terrible damage to our roads. Now, on the guarantee question, both the former governor and the attorney general who sat on the administrative ad board had a chance to guarantee the roads in this state when they sat on there. They didn't do it. We need to make sure that those who build the roads do it well and guarantee their work.
Just curious, since the two of you said that you would raise the diesel tax, any particular amount you have in mind?
Well, enough to, I think the amount would go up to the national average and would yield about $40 million for our state.
Okay. Ms. Granholm?
The same amount. Yeah.
All right. Mr. Blanchard, your turn.
Well, I'm glad you asked the question. David, what you don't know is that during my time as governor, we not only had a professional running MDOT, and we fixed the roads the right way and didn't have these problems, but we had a quality assurance program. That quality assurance program, ladies and gentlemen, was abolished by the Engler administration. They decided to let the road builders, the contractors, manage the quality, which meant the drivers were the ones that would have to find out whether we were bumping up and down or they were using noisy asphalt on I-275 or watered-down concrete on Telegraph Road. We had a quality assurance program that worked. We should have it again. But the one thing I'm going to do is make sure we have a professional running MDOT, not politicians. We'll focus our money on fixing up what we have. I think people will support an increase in the gas tax, by the way, if they think our money is being spent wisely. But I don't believe it's been spent wisely at all. I would agree on parity with the diesel, and I would also agree that we can get better federal return on our dollar. But I don't think until the people are satisfied and I am satisfied with the quality assurance, we should talk about raising any kind of a gasoline tax. Thank you.
All right, I hate to keep cutting you.
I'm not seeing the light.
Okay,
you need to
the one right in
understand.
front here?
I don't know that those are working.
Okay, all right. They're both places, but I'll keep reminding
Sorry.
you. All right, very well. Guy, your question to Mr. Blanchard.
Mr. Blanchard, the state of Michigan gave emergency powers to the mayor of Detroit to take over City of Detroit schools, as you probably know. And as a result, they then appointed a CEO and an appointed school board. We've also seen a state takeover in Kalkaska as well. As governor, would you support state takeover of troubled and failing districts? And specifically in the city of Detroit, would you reinstall the duly elected school board in the city?
I would absolutely reinstall a duly elected school board. I think the takeover is symptomatic of the heavy-handed nature of what's going on in Lansing. It isn't, by the way, Detroit.
Or would you wait?
Well, we would make sure we had a transitional plan to do it as soon as possible. But I would say this, had I been governor, I don't believe that takeover would have ever occurred. We would have been working with the school system, working with the teachers, working with the parents, working with the school support personnel to improve education, not just in Detroit, but all over the state. I created something called the Detroit Compact, which is designed to give kids incentives to stay in school. So when they finish, they'll have a good job or a community college education or university education. These are the kind of things we need to do. We need to be reaching out with parents. We need to have health clinics in schools. We need to worry about mental health. We need to make sure that every child is ready to learn when they start school and they are employable when they graduate. And we need to make sure that if they're ready for college, we help them get the assistance. Those are the things I would do, not try to take away the power from the city of Detroit, whether it's schools, recorder's court, the water system, or anything else. In fact, I think that kind of heavy-handed nature has destroyed the spirit of cooperation people need all over our state, from the Upper Peninsula to Flint to Ferndale, my hometown. The people are crying out for a spirit of cooperation with their governor and with state government. I will bring that spirit. I did before. I'll do it again.
Thank you, Mr. Blanchard. Ms. Granholm?
I very much agree that the right to vote in the city of Detroit must be restored. It is a hugely paternalistic move on the part of Lansing to come in and impose a system without consulting with those who are most affected. There's no doubt that people want to improve the schools. The model I look to is what they're doing in Grand Rapids. They are having some trouble with their school district, and they are bringing the community together to come up with a collective solution. They're bringing the business community, the education community, community organizations, the political community, the government, and they are going to come up with a plan that works together. This legislation, had it arrived on my desk, would never have been signed, and nor would it have gotten there in the first place. I very much agree. We cannot go in and expect, especially when people are articulating the words local control, and then go in and impose a solution. I'm very interested in home rule. I'm interested in letting cities govern themselves with assist if they need help.
Mr. Bonior?
Well, what we need is teamwork, not takeover. And I'm interested in the answer by the Attorney General, because the Attorney General went into court with John Engler to defend the takeover of the Detroit public schools. Had I been in her position, I would not have done that. Now, this is about respect. It's about local control. It's about home rule. We are falling into a very dangerous pattern in our state of taking over. We've got not only school districts, the two that you mentioned, but there are other school districts that are in deep financial trouble. We've got many, many cities in the same situation. We can't take over everything. Jim was right. What we have to do is involve ourselves early in trying to solve the problems with our schools. We knew, for instance, in the city of Highland Park and Flint, they were going to have trouble. When Chrysler left Highland Park, when GM was leaving in Groves and Flint, the time would have been early to get involved and to establish alternative ways to help those economies. The same thing with education. Get in early and do the job early.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Bonior. Diana, your question to Mr. Bonior.
Mr. Bonior, this next question lays heavily on my heart. Recently, Detroit has had a horrible string of kids dying in gun violence. As governor, what would be your role in keeping our kids safe?
Well, this violence must and it will stop. I was at the rally we had against violence on Belle Isle just a couple of weeks ago. And it was a very, very moving experience for me, and I think for many people who were there. I talked to parents who had lost children at a tender, very young age to violence in our streets. We all need to be personally involved. I live in Mount Clemens, and we have a neighborhood close by where I live that's had a huge drug problem. And the streets were unsafe. So what we did was we got together as a community. We walked the streets, we patrolled the streets, we got the police involved and the prosecutors. We arrested the people who were coming in to buy drugs as well as those who were selling it. And then we got the community involved to make sure that we could raise some money so we could develop an infrastructure in the community to build a community center. And I got them a couple $1 million, and that's what we're doing. We need to put police officers on the street. I was instrumental in getting 100,000 police officers on our streets all over America, thousands of new police officers for the state of Michigan. We need to rekindle that kind of program. And we also need to make sure we get guns out of the hands of our children, out of those with mental disabilities, and certainly criminals. Staying involved with kids at the earliest age all the way through adulthood is the best measure. You invest early, you don't have to worry about problems down the road.
Mr. Blanchard, your response to very sensitive question?
Oh, yeah, it's terrible, and I was at the rally as well. And you know, recently I was at a high school in Detroit, a high school in which all the kids are going to college, and it's not one of the entrance schools, it's CMA, Communication, Media, and Arts High School. And I asked the classroom, how many of you know someone who has been shot? And I was shocked that about 2/3 of the kids raised their hand. These were seniors. Shocked. But it's not enough to have tough penalties. What I will do is work with the mayor, work with law enforcement officials, make sure the state police and others work with them. I created the COPS program, Community-Oriented Policing, when I was governor, and it's worked very successful. And we can do that again. We can work closely with police. But it is going to require a community outreach. There's no question. In my mind, you could surround a house with a SWAT team. It won't happen. We need to recreate a compassionate system of mental health. I believe these people are mentally ill. We need to have a mental health system that will work with them and work with the schools and work with faith-based organizations.
Thank you, Governor. Ms. Granholm?
Thank you. 4 things. 1, I would create a drug court system to make sure that those who are abusing and who are using get treatment or get prison. 2, I think it is very important that we realize there are 20,000 right now wanted fugitives out in the street who have violated probation or parole. As a state, we must get them. We must put them behind bars because they are making our communities safe. These children, several of which, to my understanding, were hurt by people who were out on probation or parole. 3rd, I have called for increased penalties for those who are drive-by shooters because they are, in effect, domestic terrorists. These children, it is not their fault that they happen to be caught in the crossfire. And 4th, we have a situation where the state owns 16,000 vacant parcels of land in the city of Detroit. A number of them have structures on them that are used for drug dealers. We must turn those vacant parcels of land over to community development groups, to citizens, to make productive use out of them so that they are not housing drug dealers.
Thank you, Ms. Granholm. Guy, your question to Ms. Granholm.
Yes, let's talk for a moment about basement backups and closed beaches because they've become quite commonplace recently. We've had over 200 communities in the state of Michigan admit to illegally dumping untreated sewage into our waterways because their systems just couldn't handle it. My question is twofold. First, short term, are you going to more vigorously punish these municipalities that do this so often? And secondly, in the long term, it's estimated to be a $50 billion fix in southeast Michigan alone. What's your strategy for fixing it, and who's going to pay?
It's a huge question, Guy. First of all, as the Attorney General of Michigan, I can tell you that we have prosecuted more environmental crimes under my watch than we have in the history of the Office of Attorney General. It's a huge issue, this question of what we do about an entire basin. We are all downstream from somebody, and particularly when you consider Southeast Michigan, which is, I know what you're talking about, Guy. We've got a $50 billion problem. How do you pay for it, and who fixes it? 1, we have got to go to the federal government for assistance. This is an enormous problem. We cannot do it alone. The problem is, for example, on Lake St. Clair, in the past 6 years, they have had 398 beach day closings. There have been 3 billion gallons of sewage pumped into Lake St. Clair, at the same lake that 4 million people get their water from. That is outrageous. It is unfortunate, and with all due respect to Congressman Bonior, I do think we have to get federal solution. And unfortunately, you know, when he was the second most important person in Washington on the Democratic side, we weren't able to get that money back here. And I would like to pursue additional federal dollars. We also have several solutions. There is the separated sewer, there are retention basins, there are merely, you know, barrels at the end of downspouts. The problem is the system is not up to speed, and as a state, we must make it a priority to find the funding to get it done.
Thank you, Attorney General Granholm. Mr. Blanchard, your response, just so that you all have a little reference here. We're about halfway through this debate.
Well, it's a huge challenge. The whole infrastructure challenge is a huge challenge. How do you pay for improved sewer and water, not to mention roads, bridges, schools? The state has to play a role in a bond bank. We have to make it easier for communities to borrow money to fix up their systems. I can tell you that we proposed that and started that during my earlier service, but now in the future, we're not only going to have to make sure we crack down on the permits, but we're going to need a new polluter pay law. We're going to need to hold polluters responsible for their damages rather than stick the taxpayers, and that may mean local communities as well. During my earlier service, we actually had to sue the city of Grand Rapids. I know many people from Grand Rapids are watching, to try to end the storm sewer overflow. We worked with Western Wayne County, I might add, in the downriver for the super sewer. All these are important. Water is going to be increasingly an issue, whether it's Great Lakes water or drinking water or beaches, and that's why I proposed a new State Department of Great Lakes and Water Quality, not only to protect the lakes, but to protect our drinking water, our inland lakes and streams, and look at the whole issue of quality.
Right. You would elevate it to a cabinet level
Absolutely.
position, yes or no?
Yes.
All right. Mr. Bonior?
Well, clearly there's been too much raw sewage dumped into our waters of this state. And it's not just in southeastern Michigan. It's all over the state. It's dioxin up in the Tittabawassee River area. It's PCBs in Lake St. Clair. It's garbage that's come into our state from Canada and other states, and they're being put in landfills very close to water intake facilities. Now, I would say to the Attorney General who raised the question about my effectiveness, I was able to get federal dollars into my congressional district, St. Clair Shores, Mount Clemens, Port Huron, to separate those sewers. And yes, we need to do better, and we need to get the federal and the state government to cooperate on this effect. But you, as Attorney General, had the ability to sue, to stop this discharge into our rivers and streams. And I ask you, what did you do with respect to this? Well, why was it continuing then in areas that you've just alluded to? And I would say to my friend here, and he is my friend from Beverly Hills, Michigan, Mr. Blanchard, that there were almost there were almost 500 lapsed pollution discharge permits under his administration.
All right. Thank you, Congressman. I realize that there are a few charges going back and forth. We will stick with the format of the debate, but I will remind you that you do have closing statements, and that might be an opportunity to be able to respond to some of these charges. Another viewer mail question, and this one is directed to Mr. Blanchard. We received several letters, several emails from people concerned about another environmental issue, and that is trash coming in this state from Canada. Marilyn Lyman of Clawson says, are you going to do anything to stop the thousands of tons of trash from Canada?
The answer is yes. In fact, we were moving aggressively when I was governor. I'd also add that if Michigan didn't have such a powerful dump site lobby, we wouldn't have the fact that we are the cheapest place to dump. A lot of our viewers may not know, but we are the cheapest place for people to dump their waste from all around the Midwest. We have trash coming in from Indiana, Illinois, Wisconsin, and yes, Canada. If we charge a reasonable tipping fee here, that will stop. We can also have a moratorium on new dump sites. And yes, as your former ambassador to Canada, I think I'm probably better suited to work with the Canadians. But if we make it so cheap that they can send their drivers here from Columbus, Ohio, or Indianapolis, or Chicago, and send them back empty and still send them on a vacation, we're not going to end this. And I would break the hammerlock that the dump site lobby has on Lansing this very day. And I can do that forthwith.
Mr. Bonior?
Well, Michigan is a cathedral. It's not a dumping ground. We're going to stop the trash coming in from Canada, 250 trucks a day very soon over the Ambassador and Blue Water Bridge, and the trash coming in southwestern Michigan and Berrien County from Illinois and Indiana and Ohio. This is a beautiful state. And if I have to, I will have inspectors at the bridge, and we will inspect every truck that comes across here, and they'll get the message in Toronto, that's where most of this trash is coming from, that they've got to get together and get their act together and have a recycling program, that we're not going to receive their trash. I also will stop the tax benefits to dumps that receive Canadian trash. We're providing through the Michigan Economic Development Corporation tax benefits. We just gave $20 million, the MEDC, I should say the state did, to provide benefits to waste management, of all people, for waste hauling of Canadian trash. That is outrageous. And so this will be a priority for our administration. We aren't the only ones that don't like this trash. You talk to the people in Sarnia and Windsor, they don't like it either because it's coming through their communities. We will stop it dead.
Ms. Granholm.
I agree that we should put a moratorium on siting any new landfills that don't meet our needs. I also think that we should insist that those who dump in our state abide by our rules. I would like to see the expansion of the bottle bill, for example, to beer, to juice and tea containers. That way, anybody who dumps in this state would have to have a bottle bill that also includes cans as well as tea and juice. This issue, though, has, I know, been on the table for a long time in Washington. In fact, Congressman Bonior, I know you've introduced legislation for many, many years. The question that I have, though, is why didn't you get it done, even when you were the majority whip in Congress? The issue is, who is going to get it done? Who's going to get it done for Michigan? We need to make sure that we stop the trash delivery. And the way to do that is to limit our landfills and to make sure we get some congressional action. And I would ask that we do that immediately.
Very quickly, yes or no? Would any of you support sending our trash to Canada?
No, people need to take care of their own trash. And I did get a bill passed in the House, and the garbage companies killed it in the Senate.
All right. Ms. Granholm, yes or no?
I would be open to doing that, assuming that we have a reciprocal agreement.
All right.
Actually, there has been some back and forth over the years. The key, though, is for us to get real economically and charge a fair price. That will stop it. We don't need theatrics here.
All right, very good. All right. Next question, another viewer mail question. This one will go to Mr. Bonior. A big issue here is the CCW permit. What's your position on the concealed weapons right to carry law that has been in existence for over a year? And as this person, the name is Dale Renard of Lincoln Park, says we have not seen a Wild Wild West shootout.
He's absolutely right. We haven't seen a Wild Wild West shootout. In fact, Macomb County, where I hail from, I represent Macomb and St. Clair counties, we established a program much earlier than the state. We had about 40–45% of the permits, and we have not had any increase of violence as a result of the carrying of concealed weapons. And then, of course, the law was passed in the state. My position is we ought to let it work, and we've got enough gun laws in the state. We need to enforce the laws that we have. It's a threat to many people in this state who love to fish and love to hunt. They look at gun laws and they say to themselves, you know, they're after me. Well, people bond. Parents bond with their children, fathers and sons, mothers and daughters. It's a big part of our life. It's a big part of tourism. 500,000 people come into our state to hunt every year, and 1 million people hunt and fish in our state. So we've got to balance reasonable gun laws like the Brady Bill that has a 5-day waiting period. I know we had an instant check in Michigan, but this was a reasonable law that was passed. And then we have to also enforce the laws that we do have today.
Ms. Granholm.
I agree that the Second Amendment is a very important part of who we are, particularly to our economy. Hunting is very critical. I was one of the people who did not support the liberalization of the CCW laws. I was one of those who predicted that there would be not so much a Wild Wild West, but I was concerned certainly that there would be instances of road rage. I'm very pleased that that has not happened, and I'm certainly willing to take a wait-and-see attitude about it. I think that for people to be able to protect themselves, to have a firearm, is very important, and I don't at all diminish anybody's right to do that. My concern about it taking away the discretion from the prosecutors is that on the mental health side, we don't have a good system yet to determine whether somebody has a history of mental illness. Nonetheless, the Michigan's Second Amendment is stronger even than the federal Second Amendment, and I'm very cognizant of that, and I do think it's a very important part of who we are in this state.
Mr. Blanchard.
We have tough gun laws. I've always believed we ought to enforce them, and that's what I will do with the new law. That was my position as governor before, which was we have tough gun laws, let's enforce them. And I might add, the gun issue was never an issue because both sides, the sportsmen as well as the gun control people, understood that there was going to be stability in law enforcement. I also think that hunting and fishing is a major part of what makes Michigan a special state, and that's why I proposed a constitutional amendment to protect hunting and fishing for future generations. More than 1 million each fish and hunt here. That's part of tourism. And while we're talking about tourism, I think it's important to understand that we're going to have to do everything we can in dealing with our economy to expand other industries. We have a huge challenge in manufacturing. Will Michigan remain the center of high-skill manufacturing in North America? Our big three automakers lost over 10% of their market share. We've got to work with our manufacturers and business and labor to grow the jobs we need for the future. I did it before. We'll do it again.
Thank you, Mr. Blanchard. Diana, your question now goes to Ms. Granholm.
Ms. Granholm, today Channel 7 Chief Investigative Reporter Steve Wilson broke the story of price gouging on generic drugs by pharmacies. Steve documented that in some cases the markup has been more than 4,000%. What specifically will you do to make prescription drugs affordable for Michigan residents, and how can you keep pharmacies from driving up prices?
First of all, we need to do what other states are doing in this area, which is to leverage our buying power, to negotiate directly with the pharmaceutical companies, buy in bulk, and offer it back at a lower price to seniors. This is part of my plan. It's what other states are doing. We need to do it here in Michigan. Second, as Attorney General, I have done surveys from pharmacy to pharmacy of the differences in the cost of prescription drugs. Prescription drugs are not regulated, and people don't understand that. They have to shop around. So we've seen as much as a 400% increase from one place to another. We need to have transparency in the pricing of drugs so that people understand what they're getting into. But the state needs to take a much more active role in offering a prescription drug benefit to seniors. We also need to make sure that the state does not allow, for example, Blue Cross Blue Shield to convert to a for-profit entity. The health care of our citizens depends on having a social safety net. Blue Cross Blue Shield is there to make sure that we have a social safety net for all comers. On the other points of my health care plan, I would like to see us improve access to primary care. People show up in the emergency rooms for treatment, and that's the most expensive kind. We need to leverage additional federal dollars to make sure that we have additional federally qualified health centers in Michigan. And I'll appoint a Michigan Surgeon General to promote wellness, to promote health, and to promote public health. We used to be number 2 in the country in terms of public health, and we've dropped to number 34. Health care and the cost of prescription drugs is going to be hugely important to my administration.
Thank you, Ms. Granholm. Mr. Bonior.
Well, I have offered a plan with my running mate, Senator Alma Wheeler-Smith, who has introduced the legislation in the Senate to buy in bulk. You buy for 10 million people, you can get it a lot less than if an individual goes into a pharmacy. And if you get a compact going with other states and increase that, you'll be able to reduce the cost of prescription drugs 40, 50, 60%. And that'll be a savings for everybody, everybody's plan, pharmacies, the hospitals, and of course the state government. Now, when the Attorney General had the chance, she did. She ended up siding with John Engler in the Studier versus the public school employee case, which allowed the state to increase prescription costs and health care costs for retired school employees in our state. And she took the side of Governor Engler in allowing that to happen. So when she had the chance to do something, she didn't do something. Health care is very important, and we're going to continue in Washington to make sure we get prescription drugs under Medicare so all our seniors have what they so richly deserve.
Thank you, Mr. Bonior. Mr. Blanchard, your response.
Well, I think a lot of their comments are very appropriate. I will create a new State Department of Public Health and Wellness. The Department of Public Health has been abolished. And yes, we're going to leverage the state's buying power to reduce drug prices so people have reasonable costs. And yes, we should have a drug prescription program for seniors at the very least. I also think we can work with Ontario and Canada, which I've had some experience in doing as ambassador, to try to leverage our relationship with Canada on getting the cost of prescription drugs down. Regarding the one thing I wanted to mention, though, I was curious that Ms. Granholm was dwelling on Blue Cross Blue Shield. I don't think anybody wants to see them privatized, but I also know that your husband's been a high-paid consultant to Blue Cross Blue Shield at a time when your office regulates them. And this is the kind of problem we've had with the airport, with so many things where you failed to exercise good judgment, allowed conflicts to occur, allow campaign contributions to flow to your campaign, even when you're supposed to be regulating these people, whether it's the airport scandal or now Blue Cross Blue Shield. This raises some very serious questions.
All right. Thank you, Governor. Guy Gordon, your question to Mr. Blanchard.
Mr. Blanchard or Mr. Bonior? Mr. Blanchard? Okay. Mr. Blanchard, let's clear the air about abortion. You and Ms. Granholm have had charges and counter-charges on the air in your ads. First of all, what is your stance on abortion? And most specifically, do you support the ban on Medicaid-funded abortions? Do you support the 24-hour waiting period?
No.
Do you support parental consent?
No, and I did not as governor. I vetoed each and every restriction on a woman's right to choose. I'm the only candidate standing here who has an unwavering and clear-cut position advocating, defending, and protecting a woman's right to choose, period. Ms. Granholm says she's pro-choice, even runs ads saying it, but in each and every official act as Attorney General, she sided with John Engler and Right to Life, even going so far as to go to the U.S. Supreme Court voluntarily, gratuitously, to line up with Right to Life and John Engler to deny a woman's right to choose. The same is true in issuing opinions as Attorney General, in going to court as Attorney General. I can't think, and she's not able to name a single official act where she has defended, advocated, or protected a woman's right to choose as Attorney General. And this is a big issue. It's a big issue because the Supreme Court stands one vote away, one court appointment by George Bush away from repealing Roe v. Wade or throwing more chaos at states where further restrictions are going to occur. I will roll back the John Engler era of denying a woman's right to choose. I will do it as quickly as I can. It will be difficult. We will need the support of the people. But I'm the only candidate standing here who has that kind of determination.
Okay. Ms. Granholm, I guess it's appropriate that you're next in line.
Thank you. Let me make it very clear. I am 100% pro-choice. Jim Blanchard knows very well what the role of the Attorney General is in the state of Michigan, as does David Bonior. I didn't pick my client, who is John Engler. I'm the only elected Democrat in Lansing, and I've had to represent a Republican legislature, a Republican House, a Republican Senate, a Republican governor, and of course I'm faced with a Republican Supreme Court. Do you think I want to be in this position? Heck no, but I've taken a constitutional oath to represent a client. This is such a ridiculous charge. I've been endorsed by every pro-choice organization that has made an endorsement in this race. No. Emily's List, 100 Women, Michigan Now, National Women's Campaign Fund, two of which endorse men as well as women. Jim Blanchard ought to know better, as should David Bonior. It is ridiculous to criticize me as Attorney General for a job that the people hired me to do.
Very quickly, do you support the 24-hour waiting period?
No.
Do you support parental consent?
I support parental consent, but I also support a reasonable bypass, which does not exist right now.
And do you support the ban on Medicaid-funded abortions?
No.
All right, thank you.
Mr. Bond.
Can I yield my time to each of these individuals here?
This isn't Congress.
I know it isn't, but I was rather enjoying their comments. Well, I oppose abortion, with the exceptions of rape or incest or to save the life of the mother. I will, as the governor of the state, uphold the 1973 court decision. It is the law of the land. I oppose public funding for abortion, but I support family planning, including the availability of RU 486 and funding for Planned Parenthood for non-abortion activity. I support prescription drug coverage for contraception. I support funding for prenatal care. And I oppose the gag rule because I believe a doctor and a patient should have the options all in front of them. And so those are my positions on this issue.
All right. We have just a little bit of time before we hit your closing statements. Not enough time to go for a full round, so if I can ask a couple quick questions here, that would be great. Capital punishment. Do any of you feel as though it should be placed on the ballot for voter consideration? Let's begin with you, Mr. Blanchard.
No, I don't see it as a way to fight serious crime. No, we've had a constitutional tradition of banning it. I would support that ban.
All right. Mr. Bonior?
I believe in life, and the highest responsibility of government is to protect life, and I've opposed the death penalty my whole career.
Right.
I oppose the death penalty as well.
Right. Running mates, it was mentioned earlier, Mr. Bonior, that you have already selected your running mate. Mr. Let's switch the order here. Ms. Granholm, have you given consideration to who your running mate would be?
I've certainly considered it.
All right. Would you like to tell us who?
I'll let you know.
You have a lot of interesting people here.
Somebody who's excellent. A Democrat.
A Democrat. Male, female?
I'm open to everybody who's excellent.
All right. There has already been a minority selected in here with Mr. Bonior. Would you try to counter that?
I think it's very important that the ticket of the state reflects all of Michigan. So I think it is very important that there be minority presence and women presence on the ticket.
All right. Mr. Blanchard, you haven't selected your running mate yet.
I'm superstitious, and I always believe you want to win a primary before you go pick a running mate. And that's what I've done before. In fact, I think we surprised everyone in selecting Martha Griffiths as my original running mate. And I don't think, had I had thought about it beforehand, I wouldn't have had the time to figure out that she was ideal at the time. Whoever I pick, I'm going to want someone that can help me manage our economy and deal with the economic challenges we face, deal with the financial challenges. I mean, the central issue here is how do we get our economy back on track? How do we help create jobs? How do we work as a partner with business? How do we provide for better schools, better universities? How do I expand my Michigan Education Trust? How do we deal with turning around a sagging economy and helping create jobs in Michigan?
Can I talk about my running mate? she's the best. She's a state senator, smart, she's bright, and she's tough. And she's the ranking member on the Appropriations Committee. She knows state government. Yes, she is an African-American, and she is a woman, but she is one of the most competent individuals we have in state government. And that kind of choice is indicative of who I will choose for other department heads and cabinets. It will reflect the great diversity of our state.
All right. Can I be in the room when you have that first issue dealing with abortion? She's pro-choice, you're pro-life?
Well, you can be in the room, and she's worked on me already, and we've had some very good discussions, and we've come to some conclusions.
Who will win?
Well, we'll see.
All right. Very quickly, yes or no, all I have time for. Smart millage. Will you vote for or against it? Mr. Blanchard?
Support.
Definitely yes.
Yes.
All right. All right. Earlier, we had to draw for the order of the closing statements, and in that order, we will now reveal that. You've not had any advanced knowledge of this, so no one's had an edge on anyone at all. Mr. Bonior, you drew first.
I drew first.
You have 90 seconds.
Well, Yogi Berra once said that when you come to the fork in the road, you should take it. Well, we've come to the fork in the road. And we have three candidates, and we all have different experiences. My two opponents are trained attorneys. They know what's legal. But Michigan needs more than a lawyer. Michigan needs a leader who knows what's right. The next governor has to stand up for us. We talked this evening about Enron and Kmart and WorldCom and the broken promises they made to our families, the fact that they've eliminated jobs and they have wiped out pensions and they've stolen health care benefits and they have destroyed lives. We have seen those at the top refusing to take responsibility and everyone else taking the fall. In the Bible, in Proverbs, in chapter 29, it says, "Where there is no vision, the people perish." My vision is a Michigan where health care is accessible, prescription drugs are affordable, where redlining is eliminated and pensions are protected, where class sizes are smaller and our water is cleaner. I believe that if you work hard, you deserve a good wage. That if you or your family get sick, you deserve health care. That if you put a lifetime of service into a company or a government, you deserve a pension that nobody can take away. My message to the people of Michigan is, I will fight for you. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Bonior. Mr. Blanchard, you go second.
We don't need a litigator or a lawyer, that's true. We need a proven leader. I have two worthy opponents, as I think everyone knows. One, ostensibly the newest candidate in Michigan, is a product of the oldest political machine in Michigan, the Wayne County Democratic machine. The other, a distinguished congressman, has spent the last 26 years in Washington. I'm looking at Michigan with a new perspective, having been your ambassador, having been an advisor to President Clinton. And I see a Michigan after 12 years of John Engler that not only has a $1 billion deficit and unemployment rising, 8,000 of our top people being laid off, but mental health in a mess, hospitals closing, beaches closing, tuition skyrocketing, 50% above the national average. We're going to have to turn that around. It's going to take proven leadership. I am the only candidate running who has the experience in turning around a sagging economy. I helped create 650,000 new jobs as governor. I helped save 180,000 jobs in authoring and leading the Chrysler Rescue. I've balanced 8 straight budgets, left a $422 million rainy day fund. I know how to create innovative educational programs like my Michigan Education Trust. Over 60,000 students are covered by MET. Whether it's computers in the classroom or expanding trade with Canada, we've got to get our economy back on track. And we need a new spirit. We need a new spirit, a spirit of cooperation, of compassion, of innovation. But most of all, we need to get things done. I will do that, and with your help, we'll get Michigan working again. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Blanchard. Ms. Granholm, it's your lucky day. You drew the third position.
Great. I, too, want to go work for you. I want you to hire me as your next governor to fight to protect your families and to educate our children. Proven leadership and experience is important in this race, and I think you have an array of experience here. Governor Blanchard, with all due respect, left the state with a $1.4 billion budget deficit and raised taxes 38%. Wow. David Bonior, who has served in Congress and has made prescription drugs and trash and Lake St. Clair and, making certain issues a hallmark of his campaign, has not gotten it done in Congress. Some people talk the talk and some people walk the walk. I go to battle, and I go to battle for people. On behalf of senior citizens who complained that their cost of prescription drugs was going through the roof, I took their case and sued some of the biggest prescription drug companies and lowered the cost for seniors. On behalf of parents who care about their children on the internet, I took their case and made sure we went after predators and child pornographers online. On behalf of certain seniors and workers who cared about their pension, I put those who were making fraudulent investment decisions for them in jail. On behalf of you who drove on the roads and cared about the price of gasoline after September 11th, we lowered the cost of the gas, we went after them. Some people talk and some people act. If you want the same old, I'm not your man. If you want somebody who is going to talk about some of the bad things that politics does, who castigate spouses, I'm not your candidate. But if you want something entirely new, I'm your candidate.
All right, thank you very much. We want to thank all of you for joining us today. We appreciate you coming here and sharing your ideas. We want to thank Guy and Diana for your questions. We want to thank our audience who was very, very attentive, and we appreciate it, and very well behaved. No cheering, no booing, nothing like that. They can boo now. And most of all, we want to remind people to please go out and vote on August the 6th, primary election day. Since you have a bunch of Democrats, I'll quote a President, Lyndon Baines Johnson, voting is the first duty of a democracy. Good night.
The 2002 vote on Channel 7. The candidates, the issues, and what it all means to you. Political coverage with clarity and perspective right up to Election Day. Before you cast your vote, watch Channel 7 Action News.
I watch Jerry Hodak, Channel 7.
I like Mary Kay. Dave Rexroth, you're awesome.
They are meteorologists. This is real science.
They warn you, and that's a good thing.
Jerry Hodak and the Topley 7 weather team on Action News.
You did a great job today.
So little time. This Tuesday for 13 hours only. So much to gain. One of Art Van's best offers ever. No down payment, no interest, and no payments until July 2003. Plus, Art Van pays your sales tax. It's Art Van's huge 13-hour sale. Get big store-wide savings on the name brands you've always wanted. Plus, for 13 hours, do not pay for 1 full year, and Art Van pays your sales tax. But there's so little time to save so much. Art Van's huge 13-hour sale is Tuesday only, 10 a.m. to 11 p.m.
Taurus clearance at your Metro Detroit Ford dealers. 0% financing for up to 60 months. Or lease a Taurus SES for only $199 per month with a moonroof, air, and more. $199 per month with $1749 to its signing for returning AZD plan employees. Clearance deals at your Metro Detroit Ford dealers now.
Can you remember the first time you felt different from the others? Do you sometimes feel things aren't as simple for you?
Michelob Golden Light is a more complex beer. It's draft brewed and cold filtered. Complicated for us, smoother for you.
You're blocking. Blocking.
Meat so fresh and tender, you'd think you were there. Certified Angus beef from Myers, part of our 200% money-back meat and seafood guarantee. Yippee-ki-yay.
Well, it's about time.
I forgot the ketchup. I had to go back.
Yep, they're some of ours. It's 3 a.m. Do you know where your White Castles are?
We only worry because we love them. You.
White Castle. What you crave. Always open, always 45 cents.
Contains material which may be too intense for younger viewers. Parental discretion is advised.
They thought